as I watched my nephew with his tool. A wave of desire washed over me. Today, I want to share the story of how I playfully teased my nephew for an entire month, pushing him to his limits until he finally decided to confront me. I'm Jennifer, and I'm 37 years old. I'm married to Carlos, and he's 45 years old. I don't have children, but I still live in a large house in Florianopolis, a beautiful city that feels like paradise to me. I work as a truck driver, which means I travel a lot and earn well. But this also means he's never home, and that's why I find myself constantly searching for fulfillment. In other places, I can say that my marriage has always been good. Yet there were moments when loneliness crept in, particularly during those nights when he was away on the road. It was at that moment that my sister turned to me and asked for a favor. My son Christian, who was once mine for a short time, needed to spend a month in Florianopolis to prepare for an army exam. I agreed right away when Christian arrived, feeling generous and kind as I always try to be. I couldn't believe how much he had grown. He wasn't the same boy I once knew anymore. At 23 years old, I was quite attractive. I can't help but notice how handsome and strong you are. I bet you're quite popular with the girls. I made a joke, and he chuckled lightly before saying he was too caught up in training and studying to consider girls right now. I found it amusing how focused and serious she was. Yet, I couldn't help but feel something within me starting to swell. He felt different from the other guys I knew at his age. That week, when Carlos had to travel for work again, I noticed the difference. It was then that I began making moves to catch his attention. I had a plan. I was diving into something new and exciting, and I couldn't wait to see what else might unfold with Karis away for work. Christian and I were alone in the house on that first day. I chose to whip up a quick and easy lunch for myself. As I stirred, I noticed that I was feeling more nervous than usual. Having my nephew around, now that he's grown into a young adult, stirred a sense of unease within me, even though I was reluctant to acknowledge it. A sense of curiosity washed over me when Christian entered the kitchen to help me. I couldn't help but take notice. I could tell he was trying to be as polite as possible. But his gaze lingered on me. Unable to look away. I think this outfit is a bit much. I'm sorry if it is. I find myself feeling more at ease and competent in situations. I asked casually as I prepared that edible. I was taken aback by the question, but I couldn't help but smile. No, Auntie, he looks great. Don't worry, I reassured her. I found the conversation to be quite relaxed. As we sat down for lunch, I found myself engrossed in our conversation about the exam he was getting ready for. He shared details about his training routine, and I listened intently, curious about his approach. I found myself saying that he was incredibly strong and in fantastic shape. The sort of physique you usually only see on television. I laughed and thanked him for the compliment, telling him I was really dedicating myself. Then I asked, Auntie, have you been doing any physical exercise? I feel like I'm in good shape. I let out a laugh in response. It felt like nothing special. I've always been this way, with a body that your uncle seems to appreciate. As time went on, I started to notice a shift, and my nephew seemed to pick up on it. He was incredibly respectful of my efforts. I noticed he didn't say anything to me. I found that the days passed peacefully that week. I found myself deep in thought as Carlos continued his travels, my mind racing with ideas on how I could seduce Christian. One afternoon after lunch, I took it upon myself to wash the dishes and asked Christian to lend me a hand. I watched him enter the kitchen, his calm and shy demeanor evident as he seemed ready to do whatever was necessary. Could you dry the dishes for me? I find myself wishing, I asked him as I handed him a dish towel. I felt a sense of camaraderie as he agreed and started working beside me while we washed. I found the conversation to be casual. Nothing special really. I found myself chatting with him about the usual stuff, his adjustment to city life and how his exam prep was shaping up. Yet, I couldn't help but notice that occasionally, his eyes would drift to the curves of my top that left little to the imagination. It made me wonder if I was somehow catching his interest. I dropped a spoon on the floor, doing it on purpose, pretending I really didn't know what I was doing. I crouched down slowly to pick it up. Christian's piercing gaze was fixed on me. I could sense his flustered state without even glancing his way. I held the spoon firmly in my hand, standing up and resuming the task of washing the dishes, acting as if nothing was amiss. Yet, I could see that Christian stood out in a way that was unmistakable. I noticed he was quieter, a bit more nervous perhaps, trying to hide his hatred. I noticed him fidgeting with his hands, as if something was bothering him in his pocket. I could see the surprise in his eyes at my question, and before I knew it, he fell silent. I was just thinking about the training, Auntie. I smiled at him and told him not to worry so much, that he was doing well and everything would work out fine. As we wrapped up washing the dishes, a quiet settled in, and I could feel the shift in the air between us. I could see that Christian was clearly uncomfortable, and I realized that part of it was because of me, which was exactly what I wanted that night. As I lay down to sleep, I thought about what had happened to it. It felt like more than just a simple tease. I felt something new. It felt a bit risky, yet I couldn't shake the curiosity about what other surprises the night might hold for me. After what seemed like an ordinary day, I found myself grappling with a sense of restlessness inside me. I watched as the fire that had been building up over the past few days became impossible to extinguish. Despite my efforts to make sure everything was in order, I walked into the house and made my way to Christian's room, curious to see if he needed anything. As I got closer to the door, his voice reached my ears. I can't shake the feeling that she's testing me. I could feel the excitement and nervousness in his voice as he admitted, I don't know how much longer I can hold out. My cheeks flushed as I realized I was playing with fire. But what he said on the phone hit me hard. Christian was no longer the boy I once knew. He had transformed into a man grappling with his own desires. A spark lit up within me, and my curiosity grew stronger than ever. I chose to stay outside the room, yet the sounds I heard echoed in my thoughts over and over. I could tell he was drawn to me, and the idea of it thrilled me more than it probably should have. I went back to my room, but sleep just wouldn't come. I lay in bed, restless, my mind racing with thoughts of what it might feel like to push the boundaries just a bit more. As I walked by Christian's room once more that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. Once more, I found myself listening to his voice on the phone. I can't believe she won't stop. Man, I find myself at a loss, unsure of the next step to take. Thinking about her drives me insane. I could hear the desire in his voice, unmistakable, and I realized I was on the brink of crossing a line. I stayed there, listening intently, and when he finally hung up the phone, I waited a few minutes before deciding to leave. I took a moment to pause, letting the silence settle around me before I made my way back to my room. I found myself hesitant to rush things, yet the thought that he was considering me in that light was quite appealing. That night, I found myself lying in bed, a smile spreading across my face as I realized that the game was just beginning. It wasn't only about Christian. I felt a rush of exhilaration as I realized the power I held over him, and it ignited a sense of vitality within me. Once more, I found myself eager to discover just how far this game could lead me. As I stepped into the bathroom, I made the decision to indulge in a long, relaxing bath. I suddenly remembered that I had left my towel in the bedroom. I smiled to myself, feeling it was the perfect excuse. I called out to Christian in my sweetest voice, asking him to bring me the towel that lay on my bed. "Can you grab that for me?" I inquired, making an effort to keep my tone relaxed. As he approached the bathroom door, I called out, "You can come in, Christian. If I step out like this, I'll get the whole floor wet." Trying to sound innocent, he paused for a moment, but then walked in, extending the towel to me. I could see the nervousness creeping in, his body almost trembling as he struggled to maintain his composure, all without looking directly at me. As I grasped the towel from his hands, our eyes locked, and in that moment, it felt as if time had come to a standstill. I turned to leave. I heard him mutter something about needing to leave, and I couldn't resist teasing him a bit more. "Thank you, dear. I hope I didn't bother you," I murmured gently. I leaned against the wall, my eyes fixed on my nephew's anxious face. As soon as he stepped out, I closed the door behind him, my heart racing in my chest. I realized I was getting under his skin, but I could feel the impact on myself as well. As I lay there, struggling to find sleep, I couldn't help but wonder what thoughts were racing through Christian's mind at that very moment. Was he also grappling with his own desires, just as I was? The thought that he might be thinking of me in that way lingered in my mind. It brought a smile to my face. I felt it was time for me to take the next step. But I knew I had to be careful not to go too far. It was late, and after a rather quiet day, I found myself deciding it was time to check on how far Christian had gotten. I found myself in a late-night moment, feeling the need to excuse myself for a quick trip to get a glass of water. "I wonder if you might want to take a moment to rest," I asked in a low, soft voice. "Auntie, I'm not sleepy. I feel like I should stick around here for a bit longer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could sense the nervousness in him. "I'm heading to bed now, but if you need anything, just let me know. I'll be in my room," I said, leaving the question hanging. As I approached the door, I glanced back one last time and found Christian watching me intently. His gaze lingered on me throughout the night. Sleep eluded me. The events of the day lingered in my thoughts as I slipped out of bed and made my way down the hallway. Careful not to make a sound, I paused outside my nephew's room, listening to the gentle rhythm of his breathing. A soft knock on the door prompted a sleepy response. "Yes, Auntie," he said, his voice betraying the calm he was trying to project. "It's just that sometimes I feel a little lost. I want to go out to parties, but I need to focus on my studies." I understood completely. "I get it," I replied softly, and when we were alone, I placed my hand on his. My feelings were intense, but I tried not to worry. The touch of my hand seemed to calm him while also stirring something within him. I could see it in his eyes. He was battling against that desire. "You're special to me, Christian, and I just want you to know that I'm sorry. If I sometimes wear very sensual clothes, it's because I feel more comfortable that way. And if it bothers you, I can dress appropriately. I know that men often have naughty thoughts, even about their aunt." I had laughed nervously. He looked at me with a mix of relief and desire. I didn't mind at all. "Aunt Jennifer, but like you said, a man gets excited right away when he sees a woman like you, regardless of her being his aunt." And in that moment, I murmured to sleep well before. As I left the room, Carlos came back home for a few days, and with him, a sense of normalcy in our married life returned. It felt like it used to. But now there was something unique that only Christian and I shared, a connection. He looked at me with more desire, and those little provocations, the glances filled with double meanings, made everything feel different. Everything felt like it was on the brink of something. It was late afternoon, and we had chosen to have a barbecue, soaking in the family time around us. I initially thought it was Carlos, but when he turned to face me, I realized it was Christian. He was so close that I could feel the tension of his muscles against me as he leaned in slightly. My heart raced, and he whispered, "No, I'm fine, but what are you doing here? I know my uncle won't be pleased to see me away from the grill." I tried to keep my composure as I responded, but I could feel my voice trembling slightly. Christian flashed that familiar smile, the one that always sent a flutter through me. He was focused on the meat, speaking in a loud whisper, as if he didn't want to draw attention to my little contributions. There was something in his tone that made my stomach twist with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Feelings that lingered as I chopped the vegetables. Concentrating was a challenge, especially with him so close. The warmth of his body radiating next to mine. You're trying to provoke me, aren't you? Just like I did with you," I asked, half joking and half nervous. "But just a little," he responded in a tone that was both playful and serious before stepping away, avoiding any escalation as he returned to the grill, beside Carlos, who was completely oblivious to the chaos in the kitchen. I stood there, feeling isolated as I tried to regain control of the situation and my own thoughts later. As dinner unfolded, the tension between Christian and me simmered with a certain excitement. Carlos, completely unaware, remained oblivious to the dynamic shifting in our midst while he was off on another trip. The house fell silent, creating a space just for us, and the provocation led us to my room. I slipped into a silk nightgown, its short length and soft texture brushing against my skin. I settled onto the bed, but sleep eluded me. I could sense Christian in the next room, likely just as uneasy. The thought that he might be thinking of me, just as I was of him, brought a smile to my face. I rose quietly and approached my door. I lingered for a moment, But soon my resolve strengthened, and I moved forward with light steps. I walked over to Christian's room and knocked gently on the door, feeling a mix of surprise and anticipation. When I opened it, I noticed his eyes scanning me, taking in the moment before he said anything. I was wide awake too, relishing the view and sensing the heat building between us. I moved closer, asking softly, "Can I sit beside the bed?" Even though I was already aware of the answer. He just nodded and gestured affirmatively. As I settled down next to him, the closeness intensified my thrill, and I felt I was on the verge of stepping beyond my usual boundaries. "Dear, do you want to play with me? Today is a celebration of your theoretical test score," I said, my excitement bubbling over. He replied to me in a firm voice, holding back his own enthusiasm. "I want that more than anything. Aunt Jennifer, you really get under my skin sometimes. Please don't be harsh with me right now. Just let me have a moment of joy. Don't fret, you can have your fun for the entire day. My dear, once you leave, I'll be your little reward. You'll put in the effort to ace that physical test right after we share a long kiss." I had never felt such relief when we finally finished. Christian said. I replied that Carlos hadn't taken advantage of those curves at all and that I'd have to seek out fun elsewhere. But with him at home, everything was perfect for him. Days went by, and Carlos was still absent. The house, once a safe haven, had turned into a playground where every word seemed to carry a double meaning. As Carlos came back from his trip, I noticed he was missing the bar. He rushed off to grab a few drinks while I was busy preparing his dinner. Just then, Christian approached me, his usual calm demeanor intact. He mentioned something about my Uncle Ishier today and told me to leave the bedroom door open, promising he'd be there at midnight. I nodded, and he leaned in to give me 2 kisses on my face. I remember it was just Aunt Clara who had tasted it. I couldn't help but feel the urge to let you drive me insane. Menway replied, his heat igniting something in me. And then he kissed me before heading to the living room. Carlos came back home, and after everyone had dinner, it was finally time to sleep. By midnight, Carlos had passed out from drinking too much. I found myself in my nephew's room. I could tell he was already prepared and ready to receive me as soon as he entered. I locked the door and started breaking the ice. His body was so strong and hard, and that piece of him made me shiver all over. Struggling to hold back the urge to kiss me, he asked, "Are you sure the cuckold is already asleep? Hun? I don't want him to interrupt our game." With 2 kisses, I reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, my love, I'm only yours." With that, we kissed and lost ourselves in each other for 2 hours. Eventually, I felt it was time to return to bed, wanting to keep my husband from worrying. Christian leaned in, kissed me softly, and reassured me, "Don't worry, he doesn't doubt." Jennifer, looking at me with affection, added, "What I do? My uncle is going to travel in the last week of the month. Oh dear, and this is my last week here. Let's make the most of it," Carlos said as he left the next morning at dawn. He said goodbye to me, and as soon as he started the truck, I went to open the door to go to Christian. Just then, I heard knocks on the door. It was him asking to come in. I opened the door, and he said, "Today, I wanted to be what are your thoughts on leaving my mark here in this room and on this bed?" I was only wearing a top when I replied, "Honey, this week I want you to." I wanted him to leave his mark all over the house, to fill every corner with memories. I urged him not to hold back, and as soon as I finished speaking, he came towards me, kissing me with all that youthful passion. He whispered, "This is the best trip of my whole life. Thank you, Aunt Clara. We had so much fun playing around all night. And the next day, we just slept right there." I remember when I was out taking the final exam for the contest, reflecting on every moment we spent together that month. I was genuinely surprised by you, Christian, and today, I can confidently say you've officially become my favorite nephew. I laughed, knowing there was a double meaning in my words. He responded, saying he appreciated the time he spent with me. It was a fantastic learning experience for him. He asked if everything works out, could he come back? He mentioned that if he starts working, it would be here in Florianopolis, so he could stay at my place for a long time, but only if I wanted him to. Of course, honey, my door is always open. I'd love to have more fun with you. We didn't have much fun, We could have been even bolder. We talked for a long time before he finally left. I'm still waiting for him to text me. 2. I just want to confirm the day he's coming. I've already told Carlos, and he said without any problem that Christian could stay here at home if you like the video. I invite you to subscribe to my channel. Share your thoughts in the comments, and give a thumbs up if you enjoy the content.